The Black Rose McQueen. I wanted to give a shout out to Ring IQ Boxing, and remember to tune in to the motherfucking relay.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay, where we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this per tweet from Mike Kopinger. Sergey Derevyanchenko will fight Canelo Alvarez or Jermall Charlo in the fall, sources tell The Athletic. The middleweight has received an offer to fight Canelo at 168 pounds on September 12th, as well as an offer to fight Charlo for his 160-pound belt in the fall. I want to say that these kinds of stories in reference to Sergey Derevyanchenko and who his next opponent would be have been floating around for roughly the last 4 weeks.
Just about.
And 4 weeks ago, I felt very different about a Derevyanchenko versus Charlo fight. I wasn't convinced that fight would materialize, that fight would happen in the near future. 4 weeks ago, you were hearing talks of Jermall Charlo potentially moving up to 168 pounds and how he was targeting a David Benavidez fight. 4 weeks ago, the WBC president made a public statement saying that Sergey was not the interim champion and he was not the official mandatory challenger to Jermall Charlo's belt. This was the conversation 4 weeks ago. 4 weeks later, I'm not as skeptical. Here's why. You know, Canelo Alvarez fight, it's not paying what it normally pays, given the circumstances. The fact that we're in the middle of a global pandemic and, well, there's no gate revenue.
Right.
And while Sergey's name is still being mentioned as a potential candidate for a Canelo Alvarez fight, he doesn't really seem like the likeliest candidate right now. He's definitely on the Al Heyman PBC side of things, and we all know about their island policy by now.
Right.
We all know that they'd much rather keep everything in-house, even if it means costing a fighter an opportunity, a more lucrative opportunity than what they've got for him on their side of the street. It happened with Luis Ortiz when he was offered the Anthony Joshua fight. It happened with Adam Kovnowski when he was offered the Anthony Joshua fight. It happened to Jermall Charlo when he was offered the Demetrius Andrade fight. And it happened with Gervonta Davis when he was offered the Tevin Farmer fight.
Right.
So that's an established pattern right then and there. And given that a Canelo Alvarez fight here today isn't worth what it's normally worth, I'm of the opinion that who Sergey Derevyanchenko might fight next might be Jermall Charlo. Yeah. Admittedly, I didn't feel that way 4 weeks ago, but 4 weeks later, we've got better insights. We've got that much more to mull over that now we know. Sergey Derevyanchenko isn't with Lou DiBella anymore. He's with Al Heyman, so he's on the PBC side of things.
Right.
4 weeks later, Canelo Alvarez is still shopping around. Yeah, there's the name of Sergey Derevyanchenko, but there's also the name of David Lemieux and John Ryder. John Ryder, who's been advocating vigorously to get that Canelo Alvarez fight.
Right.
John Ryder, who campaigns right there at 168 pounds, where Canelo Alvarez is set to make a pit stop. It is seeming likelier than not to me that Canelo Alvarez's next opponent is going to come down to either David Lemieux and John Ryder, and what Sergey and his team are going to opt to do is pick up that world title from Jermall Charlo. They might be looking at the situation something like, you know, the Canelo Alvarez fight ain't paying what it normally pays. And let's be honest with ourselves, we stand a better chance of beating Jermall than we do of beating Canelo. So let's go with him. I still like the fight. I wish the circumstances were a little better for Sergey. I wish he would have had a tune-up fight in between then and now, then being when he dropped that decision to Gennady Golovkin here and now, to where he's slated to fight Jermall Charlo. I would have liked to have seen Sergey get a tune-up fight, little keep busy fight in there, shake off the cobwebs and get back in the winner's bracket. I would have liked that, but these days you got to take what you can get.
I mean, it's still a good fight.
Right now we're lucky to get any world-class boxers doing any kind of boxing, given the circumstances. So if Sergey Derevyanchenko versus Jermall Charlo can be made in the near future, yeah, I'll take it. And I do happen to think that that's what's going to happen. I do happen to think that that's what's going to go down. That is the fight that will materialize. Charlo versus Derevyanchenko for the WBC middleweight title. You know, before I figured maybe Sergey's got to fight in the final eliminator before he gets a crack at the belt.
Maybe.
Because Mauricio Suleiman simply said that he's not the mandatory challenger. He's not the interim champion. So I figured, oh, well, you know, Mauricio saying this, maybe they're going to order a final eliminator for Sergey. Find somebody for him to fight. But Jermall Charlo could always fight him as a voluntary.
Yeah, they could.
I think that from where the PBC is sitting, they don't have the bodies to spare. They can't afford to send one of their guys someplace else to be content for someone else at a time when most every other outfit is set to put on cards of some kind. You know, Top Rank got the ball rolling. Frank Warren's got all his guys ready to do something. Same with Matchroom. Eddie's got all his guys and gals locked in and ready to go. And PBC is fashionably late to the party. So whatever they've got to put it to good use. They can't afford to send a guy like Sergey over there to DAZN to fight a Canelo Alvarez when they need him to fight somebody on their own side of the street and fill what slots they have. Slots with Fox, slots with Showtime. When they come back, they've got to try and come back with a bang. And a Sergey Derevyanchenko versus Jermall Charlo fight has just that kind of air about it, just that kind of intrigue. Both of these guys, they like to punch. It's almost a guarantee that one of these guys might end up hitting the deck. And that's the fight that I'm expecting to see. That's what I think is going to happen next for Sergey and Jermall. So let's hope the fight actually comes off. In heavyweight news, Deontay Wilder is not pulling out of the Tyson Fury trilogy. The trilogy is on. I'm not sure there is really anything needed to be added to this situation, Finkel told World Boxing News. We have covered this and there is nothing more to add other than we are looking forward to fighting Fury. That's all. Arum added, I wasn't aware of what Anthony Joshua said about Kubrat Pulev or Wilder stepping aside for Fury until the World Boxing News came to me. I honestly don't know what Joshua is smoking. There is zero chance of Kubrat Pulev stepping aside to allow the fight. Also, Tyson Fury is fighting Deontay Wilder. Now, the news here really isn't that all systems are a go for a trilogy. That's not what grabbed my attention about this story so much as the contrast between reality and fiction.
What?
In the digital world, there's this massive controversy involving Tyson Fury's hand wraps and how he should be charged with felony assault and attempted murder for hand wraps that were tampered with. That's what's going on in the digital world. Whereas in the real world, where the real movers and shakers, decision makers live, in the real world, all systems are a go for Wilder vs. Fury 3, and there's no mention from either Bob Arum or Shelley Finkel of any legal battle between the two parties or an investigation being mounted looking into what went on with Tyson Fury's hand wraps or his gloves. I mean, nothing.
Zippo.
You take a trip to YouTube and you'll find 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 guys can't shut the fuck up about this supposed controversy.
Right.
But in the real world, it's business as usual. I think this, more than anything, speaks to what kind of individuals opt for this kind of behavior, what kind of individuals subscribe to this school of thought to where you can make these accusations in absence of any concrete evidence, anything to substantiate what it is that's being alleged. I think what this really speaks to is the mental fragility of Deontay Wilder's fans and how they're in a rush to believe in anything, everything.
You name Fury only had half a glove on.
Oh no, he stuffed a shake weight into his glove.
Is that what it was?
JD's tangled up the brake lines on Wilder's car so he'd have to push down harder on the brake pad, thereby weakening his legs ahead of the fight.
Get the hell out of here.
Black China got all that plastic surgery on her face so she could look like Chong Li from Bloodsport.
What?
Right now, you got any number of guys running around saying that Tyson Fury, in so many whites, smashed in the side of Wilder's skull. Now, I haven't heard any news of Deontay Wilder getting his skull operated on.
Or repaired.
To repair the damage. You guys are telling me that Wilder basically got the side of his head smashed in, and the plan of action is to have him go in and fight the same guy that you allege tried to kill him.
Okay.
Under the auspices of the commission that was going to allow Tyson Fury and try to kill him.
Okay.
This is the plan.
This is it.
You have access to the all-powerful, omnipotent, omniscient Al Haymon.
Haymon.
And the best plan that you could come up with is to send Wilder back out there to fight the same guy that you allege caved in the side of his head, caved in the side of his skull.
Right.
Again? You guys couldn't come up with a better plan than that? I'm gonna need a calculator because something's not adding up here.
Hey, how's Wilder supposed to pass an MRI with a hole in his skull?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. If this conspiracy theory, if this controversy checks out, then Wilder, by all rights, should be pulling out of this fight as a result of being medically unfit to fight. In fact, I think that kind of an injury could end a fighter's career, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, if the guy's actually injured.
I mean, it's either you guys are right and Wilder's walking around with a gaping hole in his skull, which would then have to mean that Shelley Finkel and Al Heyman are sending him out there to die, or the whole hole in the head, shake weights in the glove controversy doesn't actually hold any water. It's all bullshit that was cooked up by YouTube authors to drum up views for their videos. Boys, you can't convince me this guy's passing an MRI exam with a crushed skull as a result of being struck with a blunt force object. I mean, you just can't have it both ways. And according to Shelley Finkel, all systems are a go for a third fight.
So make it make sense.
You know, it's the funniest thing in boxing. How things might seem before a fight and how much they might change after a fight. You know, before this Tyson-Fury rematch, Wilder dubbed himself the baddest man on the planet. A man so bad that he was actually hoping to catch a body, kill a man, inside of the ring.
In front of his children.
It was before the fight. After the fight, all we can hear about is how Wilder's legs were crushed under the weight of a 40-pound costume. A 40-pound costume that was tailor-made for him by two guys that looked like Liberace's offspring. And his fans, the ones that actually thought he was the baddest man on the planet. The most devastating puncher the sport has ever seen. All they can do is scramble, find excuses for why it is he got his ass kicked. I mean, what's going on here? Is he the baddest man on the planet, or is he not the baddest man on the planet? Because the way you guys are trying to defend this guy and make excuses for him...
Might be the saddest man on the planet.
It's either that or this is one of the saddest displays I've ever seen in an organized sport. The way these Wilderettes, these fanatics, are just so far removed, so out of touch with reality.
Let me clue you in.
If Deontay Wilder really got the side of his head smashed in, there's no way this guy passes an MRI exam and gets cleared to go ahead with a third fight. It just doesn't happen.
No fucking way.
Doctors, they wouldn't let him do it.
So if that don't tell a story, I don't know what will.
And finally, Mark Ramsey, the coach of unified light heavyweight champion Artur Beterbiev, says, a fight with Canelo will never happen. It won't ever happen. I don't believe he will fight my guy. Fighting Kovalev and fighting Beterbiev are two different stories. Mark went on to talk about, the rivalry between Artur and Sergey, their amateur days, all of that stuff. But let's just be honest with ourselves, folks. That fight, it really is past the sell-by date and is no longer relevant in today's light heavyweight division. As far as what the future might hold for Artur, future opponents could be located in the United Kingdom, as there are top-rated contenders who are hungry for opportunities. It is very possible, when you look at how strong the division is in England, Anthony Yarde, Joshua Buatsi are promising challenges. I know the English fans would love Beterbiev's offensive and spectacular style of boxing. I'll tell you what grabbed my attention about this article, and these quotes, and what I liked about them. I liked Mark Ramsey's no-nonsense approach when it came to Canelo, that we all knew his ascent to the light heavyweight division was never organic, and he was never going to stay there very long. Before the first punches were even thrown in that Kovalev fight, we knew that in all likelihood Canelo's going to win, and he's going to chuck that belt, throw it in the air, and go back downstairs. And that's exactly what he did.
Yeah.
If you want to hold it against him, if you want to nitpick, that's your prerogative.
You can do that.
But I just can't figure why anyone who's well-versed in the sport and knows Canelo Alvarez, knows his career, would have been expecting him to start campaigning as a light heavyweight after the Kovalev fight. Would have expected him to seek out Artur Beterbiev for a match.
Yeah.
I mean, that just wasn't ever going to happen. I think that for all Canelo Alvarez's virtues, at 175 pounds here and now against a guy like Artur Beterbiev, he would be biting off more than he could chew.
I don't even really hold it against him.
As going up there and fighting the likes of a Sergey Kovalev, even a faded, more war-torn version of him than we've seen in the past, that's still more than some other fighters have done and are doing. I actually give Canelo credit for unseating Sergey Kovalev as a champion, even if it was only for 15 fucking seconds, because that's still more than some other fighters are doing. If it's so fucking easy,
Everybody would do it.
but everybody doesn't do it. And this expectation that Canelo Alvarez henceforth was going to campaign as a light heavyweight, I mean, give me a break.
Right.
I like Mark Ramsey's no-nonsense approach when it came to Canelo. He didn't say much, but he said everything he needed to say. That fight was never going to happen.
He didn't waste a lot of time on it.
It doesn't sound like Team Beterbiev are chasing it. Rightfully so. It's just not realistic. They are setting their sights at the UK market. Potential fights with an Anthony Yard. Potential fights with a Joshua Buatsi. With good reason. Because a guy like Artur Beterbiev, he still doesn't have much of a following here stateside. I mean, he doesn't. Whereas the fight fans over there in the United Kingdom, perhaps, might give Artur a warmer reception, contingent on who the man opposite the ring of him is. While reading this article, though, I didn't really get a sense of urgency when it came to unifying with the current reigning WBA champion, Dmitry Bivol. I didn't get the sense that that fight was all that important to Team Beterbiev. Maybe they don't feel there's much money in it, you know. They've got their sights set on the UK, but they've got their sights set on the UK with good reason, you know.
The boxing scene over there.
Perhaps Team Beterbiev looks at that market as a potentially more lucrative market than this one, because in this market, Artur just unified titles in his last fight against Alexander Vosdik, but he still doesn't have all that big of a following in spite of it being a championship-level fight between what were two undefeated champions. The fight itself had a great aesthetic, but it didn't shell out earth-shattering numbers or big ratings. Artur's not a household name here by any stretch of the imagination. So if you can put on that kind of a fight and your marquee value is still relatively low, that might leave you feeling so inclined to go elsewhere for opportunities.
Yeah, that might be what they're thinking.
I mean, why else would Artur Beterbiev set his sights on guys like Anthony Yard and Joshua Buatsi, who still more or less have a lot to prove? You're the champion, the unified champion. If anything, those guys should be coming to you, but in so many words, what Mark Ramsey and Team Beterbiev are basically saying is that they are willing to come to them.
But you know what? Guess that's okay. If that's what it takes to make the fights.